All right, welcome everybody to our webinar, How to Get 15 Pounds Healthier in 15 Weeks. And I'll tell you what, this is the time of the year for that, so everybody's interested, but this is an important topic all year round. And we're going to not just do what you hear all the time, we're going to actually unpack this so you really understand there's so many moving parts to this, and it can impact different people in different ways, and it's very far-reaching. And it's something that is impacting every age and every gender. Like we're seeing it across the board as a concern for many people. So I'm going to just jump right in. And I want to start with our cultural conversation, which is being dominated by a new way of addressing concerns about weight. And that new way is something with these names. Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're the GLP, all those types of approaches, which is like the easy way out now. And if you decide to do this, you can tell something about an approach when you start to hear there are lawsuits being filed against the drug company for this approach. And that's time to pay attention. And so why is that people are concerned? One is it's very expensive and people then have to rely on it for the rest of their life as their method of managing their weight. But what about the other side effects? Here's what the lawsuit is showing, and then some: thyroid cancer, anxiety and depression, anhedonia. What that is not finding pleasure anymore in the things that you used to find pleasure in. It doesn't sound like a good quality of life to me. Loss of libido, suicidal, stomach paralysis, chronic diarrhea, addiction, heart conditions, and loss of muscle instead of fat. And so people are perhaps thinking that they are slimming down, but in the meantime, instead of losing fat, they're actually losing muscle. That's important. So we're going to actually look at that. It's called sarcopenia. And you've heard of osteopenia, that's more common, but not a lot of people have heard the word sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle. So we're going to look at that. And I want to just tell you that I have people in my practice that I've helped, and here's just one example of a woman that I helped. Her name was Donna. She came in with low back pain as her primary concern. She also had trouble with a knee, which probably was affecting her low back. She couldn't exercise because of that. And she also was concerned about weight loss resistance. And she had high blood pressure as well, which you're going to see in a minute is one of the factors that we oftentimes see parallel people that have concerns with weight loss resistance. And so she came into the office and we did our full exam with her. We did a consult. We understood what her challenges were, what her goals were, and then we made our recommendations. And she followed all of our recommendations. And 1 year later, what she reported was her low back was better, but her knee was better also. She was able to exercise. And in that 1 year, she lost 60 pounds and 40 inches. And not only that, it normalized her blood pressure, the work that we did as well. So she was not just losing weight, she was getting healthier. And that's actually really important when you consider wanting to have your ideal body. What is your objective? So for folks that are going the pathway of the Ozempic and the Wegovy, the Mounjaro, like a lot of times for those people, it's I just want to lose weight. That's their objective. And they may hit their objective, but what is the cost to them in the process? And so I think it's very important when we start this conversation that everybody should be clear in themselves, what is their objective? Is their objective to simply lose the weight no matter the cost? Or is the objective actually to be healthier? So what is your objective? Losing weight can be one of those objectives, but I want to understand the reason why behind it. I want you to understand the reason why behind it, because that will actually fuel you when you are moving through this process. And at times it can be tough and we can lose hope, and we have to just stay with it, and we might feel like giving up. But if you have a clear objective of what your why is, and then it helps you to stay the course. So maybe you understand that, as we're going to look at, the research shows that having excess weight is linked to more concerns than just appearance. that it actually is linked to a higher incidence of disease, and we're going to look at that. But maybe your objective is, I want to avoid disease. I want to increase strength. I want to increase my speed. I want to increase my performance, my capacity, my function. Maybe you have all those as your objective, and those are going to be much more meaningful objectives to have than simply losing weight, especially if that loss of weight comes with side effects because of the method that you're choosing to achieve your goal. So if your goal is, I want to create optimal health, then I can help you with that. And that's what this talk is going to be all about. How do you achieve your objectives with your ideal body, but also create optimum health at the same time? And so if you are new to our practice and you are curious about what we have to offer, at any point during the workshop, if you're inspired and you would love to know what we would think about you personally, because everybody's different, I'd encourage you to just send a text to 15 in 15 consult to our office number, 802-985-9850. And then my team can just set up a time and we can have a conversation. We can have a 10-minute call. It's on us. There's no charge for that. And that way I can just get a better sense of what your challenges are, what your objectives are, and we can see whether or not it sounds like it could be a fit that we could see if we could help. So thank you for considering that, and you're welcome to take advantage of that. And those of you that are watching that are already in the practice, if you know somebody that is struggling, please feel free to share that with them as well. So what exactly is optimal health? Well, a lot of times when people have the objective is, I want to lose weight, it's because they want to have a healthier appearance. But it turns out that if you want optimal health, you'll have improved function, and we can measure that with biomarkers. You'll have increased performance in your life and whatever you want to be doing. And it comes with that healthy appearance. So looking good, feeling great, and functioning better. That's actually what optimal health is really going to be by definition. So I have concerns because I oftentimes am seeing in the media this idea of, well, what does it mean to look good or to look healthy? And they are trying to equate being skinny as the new sexy, like being skinny is the way forward. And I want to really challenge that. That's a very unhealthy anchor to be using, especially in the younger population. And so I'd like to reframe that to healthy is the new sexy. Like, you want to be glowing with health, not just being skinny, right? Are we all on board on that? Because if that is what is being projected to our young people, then they're heading in the wrong direction. The brutal facts are that obesity is an epidemic in our country, and it is troubling, but is also informative because it really is helping us understand the weaknesses in our population. And it is being caused by poor diet or excess calories. It's being also caused by inadequate physical activity. But more importantly, there is this downstream risk factors that it's leading to. Hypertension, dyslipidemia, which is having your lipid levels going sideways, the diabetes that it comes with, and there's all kinds of cardiovascular consequences. It's also known to be associated with increase in common cancers. And of course, that type 2 diabetes, nearly 90% of individuals with type 2 diabetes are overweight. So we know that it's the downstream consequences that I have much more concern about than simply someone's appearance. So obesity, we really want to understand that it has significant consequences, and we're seeing it in our population. And when we look at the leading causes of death in America, heart disease and cancer are number 1 and number 2, diabetes is number 3. So obesity is parallel along with all of that. And we just came through COVID. Well, it turns out that this article, COVID-19 and the elephant in the room, it turned out that the people that were most at risk for bad consequences with being exposed to COVID, they were people that were struggling with chronic inflammation, and that was with excess body fat. It actually induces an immune dysregulation plus the chronic inflammation, and that leads to this whole cytokine storm that is responsible for now people having acute respiratory distress syndrome, right? So we know that that's related not just in COVID, but also influenza, that was showing up with influenza as well. People are at risk. And also it's interesting that obese adults actually shed the influenza virus 42% longer than non-obese individuals do. So their lack of health that comes with that, it has other further consequences for the immune system. And, again, it's the chronic metabolic disease that is the concern. And some people are thinking that, oh, well, I'm not obese. I have normal weight, but they may actually still have what we call that sarcopenic obesity, and especially in elderly patients where they don't look like they're overweight, but they actually have metabolic disease that is very similar to people that are obese, and they actually have lost muscle mass. So they look thinner, but they actually are struggling with the same concerns and they're not metabolically healthy. Turns out that only 12% of American adults are considered metabolically healthy, and less than a third of normal weight people are also are in this category. So we really want to look at metabolic health and what is the solution to that. And again, there's no such thing as a healthy weight, only a healthy person. And again, this article talks about patients with type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. They might have 10 times greater risk of death if they contract COVID. So again, it's a weakness that's there. And so again, our healthcare systems were already stretched even before COVID showed up. But that's because we had too much dependence on medicine as the solution. And the root cause of diet-related disease is not making good, healthy food choices, but it's more than that. And I want to show you tonight how you can see it's much more than that. So fat equals sick. And I know that I have, when I've done this webinar before, I've actually been challenged and I've been accused that I should not be doing this, that I should not be presenting this information, and that it was hurtful to people. And I know that in many cases, people are trying to normalize the fact that our population is just getting more and more obese. And I can't do that because the more obesity there is, the sicker people are. So the sooner that anybody can just reconcile the fact that fat is sick, it's not healthy, then the sooner we can get to the solutions. So I hope you will be on board with me with that. And I also want to just recognize we're going to look at all different body types. There are healthy body types in every scenario. And so there is a healthy normal that is a vast array of body shapes, but there's a difference between healthy normal and unhealthy. And we're going to look at that. And what people are currently doing, it's really not working. And it's because the behaviors that people are choosing to use in dealing with their health are not working. Even if they're being told this is the way to go, things are not working. So if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're just going to get more of what you've been getting. So as soon as we start to say, just stop, let's just think fat is a symptom and it's at the kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's a body signal. And you don't have a chance of addressing this unless you can get your head around this. So really, when we talk about obesity, what we're really talking about is a chronic hormone imbalance. So adiposity or extra body fat, it's a symptom of a chronic hormone imbalance. Hormones and enzymes are what are regulating our fat storage. And so if you want to get a handle on this, you have to regain your hormone balance. And you can do that through, not through medications, you can actually do that through specific lifestyle changes and choices that are going to directly impact that hormone balance. And that's the way forward here if you ever wish to conquer your weight and your health issues. So let's look at this perfect hormone storm that's happening. We have this is again, it's a cultural conversation. It's the way our culture has been designed. And we could not have designed our modern lifestyle to be more unhealthy. And it just pushes people towards obesity. Toxic deficient food choices that are promoted as healthy. Even in the food pyramid, they're promoted as healthy. The energy imbalances is the second criteria. And this means that we have an imbalance between the energy we're expending and the energy we're taking in. So it's the coupling of a sedentary lifestyle with excessive calorie intake. And then the perfect storm is adding in chronic social stress, lack of sleep, chronic exhaustion, and the result is weight loss resistance. And so if we're going to address this, we have to look at a three-legged stool here. And so this weight loss resistance and inflammation together is what's actually causing the people that when they try and try and try, they're just not achieving what they want to achieve. And so this three-legged stool is based on three pieces here. The first one is being able to heal and seal the gut. So the food goes in through our mouth, and until it leaves the body on the other end, that's a tube that's not in the body. It doesn't go into the body until it's absorbed. And that lining of the gut, we have to actually make sure that is functioning properly, or it's going to affect our health. So we have to first heal and seal the gut so that the right things can get in and the wrong things don't get in. And then we have to go to the cellular level and we have to fix the cell. And then we have to address the stresses. So I'm going to just walk you through these three pieces here. Now, this first picture here, healing and sealing the gut. These two mice are not just like, oh, they're from the same parent and they share some genes. These mice are clones of each other. They have exactly the same genes, exactly. The only thing that's different is the microbiome in their gut. The obese mice has a particular microbe called Methanobrevibacter smithii. It's amazing. You just change one gut microbe and it completely changes the expression of health. So gut microbes are an important thing to look at here. And so when we are healing and sealing the gut, we're going to look at the microbes in a minute, but when I say healing and sealing the gut, first we have to stop injuring the gut. And one thing that has gone under the radar for a lot of people are the foods that contain lectin. So lectin is a chemical in plants. Plants don't want to be killed. And so they have their own defense system. And one of the defenses they use is, if you eat me, I'm going to destroy your gut. And that way, maybe you won't eat me and I can survive longer. And so these foods, the grains, the legumes, and the nightshades are the ones that tend to contain the lectins. Nightshades are going to be potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, those kinds of things. But beans would be the legumes, peanuts, cashews, legumes, and then the grains, of course, are the grains. And so these are compounds that plants use to stop predators from eating them by poisoning them. Now you'll notice that chocolate, coffee, and olive oil are not on this list, so it's all good. We're okay here. But this would be something for you to consider if you're struggling. It may be that you didn't realize you thought you were eating healthy foods, even organic ones, but if they contain lectins, that can be trouble. And so when we're going to heal the gut, we have to, again, avoid microbiome destroyers. And so a lot of people don't realize that antibiotics, they wipe out good bugs, including H. pylori, and it can take up to 2 years to reestablish the same diversity in the gut if you destroy it with antibiotics. H. pylori, by the way, is a good bacteria. It's often associated with the presence of ulcers, but it actually is a bacteria that tells the brain when you're satiated. So it triggers a hormone called ghrelin to tell you, oh, I can stop eating now. And so if you don't have that, sometimes you won't have that same trigger to stop eating when it's time to stop eating. So the bad bugs in your gut are also going to communicate to your brain and make you crave what those bad bugs want, which is the junk food and the sugar. And by the way, Splenda, which many people who are concerned about their weight, they're looking for those low-cal sweeteners. And Splenda actually will destroy 50% of the good gut flora. So all those diet soft drinks actually cause more weight gain. I had a fellow coming into the office, and he was a big guy. He was a truck driver, and he was so determined to lose weight, to get healthier. And so he was walking a long way, many miles each day, but he was walking the same course, the same course, the same course. And he wasn't even huffing and puffing anymore because he had gotten so good at it. And he also was trying to make changes with his diet. And he thought that he could get away with drinking Diet Fanta, that orange drink. He was drinking like 15 of them per day. But he thought, oh, there's no calories in those. I'm fine. Well, it turns out it was just totally destroying his microbiome. It was totally sabotaging his health goals. And when we changed that one thing and we got him to do a little bit more panting, sweating exercise, boom, it just turned on. He started to just, the weight was just coming off. So, again, sometimes the very strategies that we're told are going to help us actually are hurting us. So, we have to first stop harming the gut, and then we need to heal the gut. And there are different people need different things, but there are certain supplements that we use that can help to then heal up the gut. And we test people specifically for that. But once we've healed and sealed the gut, now we need to make sure that we have that healthy microbiome. So we want to weed and seed, weed out the bad bugs and seed with good bugs, and then feed the gut. If we look at the idea behind this, the good and bad bacteria, well, there are a lot of different bacteria in the gut microbiome, and some of them are thought of as good, but anything that's out of balance can also not be good. So some of the good bacteria, E. coli. E. coli, you think of, oh no, that's a bad one, isn't it? People die from E. coli infections. Well, that's if it gets out of control and into the wrong places in the body. But if you have that E. coli in the gut, it actually serves a very healthy purpose. And it's important because it actually produces vitamin K, which is an essential nutrient that we need. And it also helps us to digest food. So E. coli is a good guy. Bifidobacteria is a good one. Lactobacillus are important. The Faecalibacterium, Prosnitzii. It's so fun to try and pronounce all of these. Anyway, they all serve a different purpose. The bifido actually turned out to be essential against COVID. They did studies, they found the people that had the worst outcomes with COVID had zero bifidobacteria. And the ones that just went flying through with flying colors, didn't have any trouble, they had lots of high levels of bifidobacteria. When I say high levels, I mean healthy, normal levels. So all these different ones have different functions. And the bad bacteria are, again, some you may have heard of. You may have heard of C. diff, Clostridium difficile, and that's troublesome because that is associated with tetanus, botulism, but also IBS. And a lot of people struggle with IBS and they have trouble with just being overrun with C. diff. The Campylobacter is associated with diarrhea, but it actually can lead to paralysis in the body, Guillain-Barré syndrome. The Enterophycelius, that one is normal in the gut, but if it gets outside the gut, it can be resistant to bacterial infections. So again, having it in the right place in the body is key. And then we talked about the Methanobrevibacter, again, associated with obesity, and we saw it in that mouse. So you can see there's importance. It's important to have diversity in the microbiome. So we want to weed out the bad ones, seed the good ones. Again, we have certain supplement protocols we do for that, and it's different for different people. I thought this study was fascinating also, just on the topic that they actually did an update and they found that there was, again, a mutual impact between SARS-CoV-2 infection and the gut microbiota. And they definitely found certain ones that were important, that if you had those, you had good outcomes. And if you had the bad guys, you had bad outcomes. So they literally are able to now look at all these different species and see the correlation, even between something like your risk for having a bad outcome with something like COVID. And, we're just waiting for the shoe to drop. When's the next pandemic going to happen? When's the next one going to come through? So we all just need to get healthier is the key here. We can't avoid it. We just want to get healthier and part of that is going to be getting the gut healthier. Now, when it's time to feed the gut, what that means is we want to feed the food that's going to help to cultivate and sustain the good bacteria. And so foods that do that are things like jicama, asparagus, Jerusalem artichoke, onions, leeks, dandelion greens are great for that, garlic, acacia powder, and even chicory root is another one. So these are just examples of things that help to feed the gut. And if you're not into adding these to your diet, there are some great supplements that we can use that can just make it very easy to do that as well. Now, this was very interesting. There was an article, it was on Mercola not too long ago, if you follow him at all. And one of the things they found was vitamin D for weight loss resistance. And it turns out that vitamin D can actually modulate the composition of the gut microbes, that it can actually help to improve the good ones and to help get rid of the bad ones. So vitamin D is important. Now we're finally getting some sun here in Vermont, and the best source of vitamin D actually comes from the sun. And the other benefit for weight loss resistance is sunshine also sets your circadian rhythm so that you get better sleep. And it turns out that poor sleep is one of the factors that is contributing to weight loss resistance because it affects our hormone levels. And again, we're going to unpack this in more detail, more about this later. Now, when we talk about weight loss resistance and inflammation and fixing the cell, here's what I mean by that. If we have a cell, it has a membrane to it. And that membrane is the interface where substances that are floating around the extracellular space but have a message to give to that cell, that message has to get to the DNA in the cell. So right in the center of the cell or inside the cell is the DNA, which has its own little membrane. And then we have our energy factories, the mitochondria that create energy. Those also have membranes inside the cell, and they are waiting for signals from the outside world to tell them what to do next. And so you'll have vitamin D floating around out here. It has to actually fit into the vitamin D receptor site, which is in the membrane of the cell. And once it, like a lock and key, once it fits into its receptor site, it will then, boom, send a signal right into the DNA to tell the DNA what to do with that information so that that cell can continue to be healthy. And it'll get those mitochondria charging up and producing energy. And then we have things like the thyroid hormones, and we have testosterone, and we have progesterone, and we have insulin and cortisol, and the leptin and ghrelin, and all these different hormones that are circulating. And the purpose of their circulating around is to then interface with the receptors on the cell membranes of all the different cells in the body to help to clue those cells into what they need to be doing right now. Now, if we have inflammation in our body, it means the cell membrane itself can become inflamed. And if the cell membrane becomes inflamed, these receptor sites are no longer available for all these different hormones and enzymes. And that means you can have insulin just piling up outside the cell. And if the cell is not receptive, that starts to turn into something called insulin resistance, where the insulin is there, but the cell is not taking the cue. It's not getting the message. And so that's when we have the experience of the disease of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. And the other thing that happens when the cell membrane is inflamed is not only do the messengers not get their message in, but the waste products that are accumulating inside the cell can't get those waste toxins out. And so now you have a cell that is building up with toxic buildup inside, and it's not getting the messages from the outside. So that is a dysfunctional cell that we're seeing happening, and that's due to inflammation. Now, one of the prime causes of inflammation in our culture comes from the foods that we're eating. And a lot of the inflammatory foods, when we talked about the grains, for example, so the grains, not only do they have the lectins, but they also have a lot of omega-6 oils in them. They're highly concentrated in omega-6 oils. And the membrane of the cell, it needs to have a combination of both omega-3 and omega-6 oils. The omega-6 oils add structure to the membrane, so we need some of those. The omega-3 oils add suppleness and responsiveness to the membrane. So we want a membrane that has some structure to it, but also is responsive. And if we overload it with the omega-6 oils, the membrane structure becomes so rigid that the receptor sites can't change and they can't adapt. And then they no longer are available for the substances that are passing through in any given moment to be able to accommodate them and make that lock and key so that the message gets in. And the one of the prime, besides grains, one of the other prime sources of the inflammatory foods, and oftentimes this is going under the radar, people are not aware, but they are the foods that are associated with the seed oils. So these poor oils now have got a list called the Hateful Eight. And the reason is because they literally are toxic to your health, and they all have been promoted as healthy oils. And people that are trying to lose weight, they're trying to avoid what they were told were the unhealthy oils, and they've been told to eat these oils. So what are they? Sunflower oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil, corn oil, rice bran oil, and even grapeseed oil, which it took a while before I realized that was on the list as well. I thought that that was a good one. Even I thought that a few years ago. And then canola oil is the big one. And canola oil, again, it's been promoted as heart healthy, but all these oils actually create that inflammation in the cell membrane, which then starts to affect all the functions in our body. But again, it's contributing to weight loss resistance. So how do you find out whether you have unhealthy cells that need to be fixed in cell membranes and inflammation? There are tests that you can do. So the omega-3 index plus test, it's actually a cellular inflammation test, and actually is testing in just a blood spot, just a little finger prick. It will measure how much cellular inflammation you have based on looking at the ratio between the omega-6 and the omega-3 oils. And so there's a certain ratio that you want to have. And for example, this person is inflammatory. Theirs is 33 to 1. We actually want it to be 6 to 1, 4 to 1. Ideally, our ancestors, it would have been 1 to 1, 2 to 1, something like that. And so we need to get this down, which is going to bring the inflammation down in the cell membrane. Another test that can be done is a microbiome test. And so I actually recently became aware of this and had myself tested, and I had a pretty strong score, but there were definitely certain things where there's improvement that I could be making. And now I know exactly what direction to go with it. So I loved getting that test kit for myself. So that's now available in our office. And then there's one other test that you can run. It's just called a neurotoxic questionnaire. And it's actually just answering a series of questions, and it helps us identify whether or not you do have toxicities just from how you answer the questions. And we can actually start to direct where is that toxicity coming from. And then it can point us in the direction we need to go in of what recommendations we can give you. So these are all tests that are available. If you're interested in the omega-3 index and the microbiome test, just let us know here at the office. You can text us if you're interested, or on your next visit, you can mention it, and we can make sure we order those test kits for you. If you're curious about the questionnaire, just send a text NTQ to our office, and we'll send you a copy of the neurotoxic questionnaire. Or if you're already members of the practice and when you come in, you can just ask for the neurotoxic questionnaire. All right. So for example, the omega-3 index plus test, it actually, again, is measuring that distribution, the percentage between the omega-3s, the EPAs and the DHAs, and how they relate to the omega-6s. And so for an example, the omega-3 index we're looking for is a 6.25% as an example. And when we 8 to 12% is the indicator of better overall health. So when you get your test, you literally are going to get a rating and then some recommendations based on what your rating is. It actually gives us a bit more information as well. And so we can actually target what foods you should be eating more of or others less of, and even some specific supplements that we can test you for. As far as let me just move this out of the way here. Here we go. So for the microbiome test, it actually gives you an overall gut score. It also gives a comparison to what are the known healthy bacteria communities and fungal communities. There are healthy ones of those and unhealthy ones. It also gives you an analysis strain by strain of what they found. And then it comes with recommendations. And again, the recommendations were very specific. I was actually impressed with it, of things that I actually could be doing to improve. I loved this test as well. Oh, let's see. All right. So how do we regain control of our hormones? And there's a lot that you can do to do this. And here are the 6 key things here. And feel free to just take screenshots or get out your phone and take pictures of things that you find are useful for you, as far as like looking at, okay, this is the list right here. So food quality. So this is important because many people say, it doesn't matter what I eat, just got to count the calories. No, that is not true. So you want to definitely be looking at the highest quality food, because the poor quality food tends to be more inflammatory. Even an organic version of one food and an inorganic version, the inorganic version may be more inflammatory. It may have less nutrients available. So you're putting food in that doesn't have as much nutrition in it. And then your body says, I'm still hungry. I'm still hungry. So you may be getting calories in with low nutrient density. That means your body is still craving more food. Whereas if you get that good nutrient dense food in, your oftentimes cravings go away and we get satiated more quickly, and so we actually don't eat as much. And that comes to this number two, food quantity. So again, if the quality is good, that's going to help with the quantity, but sometimes we just have to make decisions, smart decisions. But I love that, fill in the blank. I just want to eat more of it. Sometimes just eating more slowly allows you to enjoy the taste longer, but not actually have the quantity be as high. So again, there are tips and tricks that we can use to address each one of these things. Now, food rhythms is another thing that people oftentimes don't think about. But when you think of our ancestors, they would have had a rhythm in their day of when they ate. They would have woken up. They didn't have a fridge to go and open up. They didn't have a cupboard with canned goods and boxes of things. Nope. If they wanted to eat, okay, maybe the leftovers from last night, maybe you'd eat those, but otherwise, out you go into the world to hunt and gather to find that fresh food. That's what they were used to doing. So they had a rhythm. And so they might not have eaten first thing in the morning because it would have taken some time for them to go and look for food. They would have had to expend energy before they got to eating food. And so that's a rhythm that's important. Maybe we need to think about, before I get to eat, I have to expend some energy because that's what our body was designed for. And as far as other types of rhythms of how we're eating, well, our Paleolithic man, they would have been really going after the hunting. The meats were going to be the prime thing for them, or the animal foods, because they would have liked that bone marrow. They would have liked that liver and the brain. Like they would have really gone after those organ meats as way higher value than the flesh. Okay, we finished the organ meats, we'll eat the flesh. But they would have been holding as primary the animal foods. And then if they didn't have the animal foods and they, didn't have good luck with the hunt, okay, they were going to be vegan for a couple of days. And then they were successful for the hunt and then they were carnivore again. So there's actually a rhythm to how we eat that you might want to think about of not being vegan all the time, but having a rhythm to it. And then the other thing we can use that may be familiar to the idea of intermittent fasting. So when you wake up in the morning, don't just eat just because it's time to eat. Maybe wait until you actually feel hungry and then eat. And we'll talk about intermittent fasting at the end as another tool, another strategy that you can use to help shift your metabolism. Social stress is an important thing to think of as well, because when we are stressed, our cortisol levels go up. That's a hormone, and that totally changes the dynamic of what's happening in the body. When we're stressed, our bodies think we have to survive the next minute. We're stressed, we have to survive the next minute. And so we're not thinking about whether that's healthy or food or not first. We're just going to eat it because we're stressed, because we just have to survive the next minute. Whereas if we're not stressed, our goal is to last a really long time. And then we're going to think about, wait, why would I put that unhealthy food in if I want to last a long time? So our stress levels will have an impact on what we're allowing in and whether our prefrontal cortex, the smart part of our brain, is actually thinking about the future consequences of our actions. Versus when we're stressed, our reptilian brain takes over, and then it's just fight or flight, survive the next minute. Now, it is actually, we're going to go into the detail with the cortisol and how that relates to the other hormones in just a minute. So sleep patterns are another piece to this, because if we're not getting good sleep, our cortisol levels are high, our inflammation levels are high, and it's just a downward spiral from there. So we want to have good food quality. Glyphosate, for example, just one other thing to touch on there with the food quality. So the foods that are sprayed with glyphosate, Roundup, as the way to manage their growth in industrialized food systems. Glyphosate works to get rid of pesticides, get rid of pests by destroying the gut of the bug. And so if you're eating the glyphosate, then it can be destroying your gut as well. And that's where we come back to having to heal and seal the gut, and also to protect the gut by avoiding it. And now let's talk about the top five dieting lies. We're going to unpack each one of these. Weight problems, they run in my family. There's nothing I can do about it. Our whole family has obese issues. Or just eat less and you'll lose weight. I'll just work it off at the gym. Oh, yeah. Calories are just calories. I just have to count them. That's all. Sleep has nothing to do with it. So let's unpack each one of these now. Weight problems run in my family. Okay, I just want to say, when people say that to me, I want to say to them, the problem is not that weight problems run in your family. The problem is that nobody runs in your family. Like a lot of times it's the lifestyle choices people are making are the same in the family. That's what the problem is. And so let's just look at this, like just the idea of what is it that actually impacts our body shape. Our genes will have an impact on that and our body composition, but environment has an impact on that and lifestyle has an impact on that. And so if we just take a look at over time what has happened with obesity rates in our country, check this out. So you'll see that in 1990, and the colors here matter, white means we didn't have any data for that state. Light blue means up to 14% of the population was obese. And then the darker blue on this first one, which is just a moderate blue, actually was, that's the zero up to 14%. So the light blue was 0% that we had the data on. Nobody was obese in that state. And we actually had the data to show it. This is in 1990. And look at what happened. In just 8 years, we had the majority of the country now being 15 to 19% obesity, and some of them climbing up into the 20 to 24% obesity, the beige, the peach colored ones. Okay, but notice where that is. It's so interesting. The rains come across the country through the farming belt where they're spraying the glyphosate, and the glyphosate comes in the rain and rains down into the Mississippi, and the Mississippi Valley just concentrates it all, and it comes right down into this area here. And you'll notice on the next one here of the country, 2006, these black areas here, this is where there's more than 30% obesity, and that's in 2006. I promise you, the numbers are even higher now. But this is also known as Cancer Alley, this area, because of that glyphosate coming down and just burdening the health of those folks. So we can see in just 16 years a dramatic increase in obesity here. And so genes don't change that fast. So this is not something where obesity runs in your family, because genes just don't change that fast. It is environment and lifestyle that is changing here. And so we can clearly see it demonstrated. So what changed? Again, not the genes, environment and lifestyle. And so with that lifestyle, it's how you eat, how you move, and how you think. So it's the environment, it's your relationships, and it's also the strategies and the choices that you're making. So we really can do nothing about genes, and maybe there are a few people that, they say, well, I just look at a cupcake and I gain weight, and that's true for my whole family. So think about it. The only stress that our ancestors had that was a chronic stress versus an acute stress, short-lived stress. So short-lived stress would be a tiger chasing you, or a thunderstorm coming, or oh no, someone's going after my mate. Those are short-term stresses. The only long-term stress that our ancestors would have had was famine. That's the only long-term stress they would have had. And so the body actually genetically is ready to deal with famine. And the way it deals with famine is you just store more fat. So if there's a chronic stress, genetically speaking, any kind of chronic stress, our body's just saying, oh, that must be famine. We better store fat now. And so we have chronic stress in our modern lifestyle that's been engineered into it, coming at us from all directions. But when we're chronically stressed, it will upregulate those genes to help us to survive the famine. And so we will store fat. So genes can have one aspect to it, but besides that, when you think of somebody that, I just look at a cupcake and I gain weight, well, in a famine, those would have been the people that had the most successful strategy. So the only reason that is genetically in our system is because it got passed down as a valuable genetic choice to have. So but we can work with that. See, we can be smart about it, and we can use our smart brain to deal with our stresses more effectively, to turn that stress switch off, and then that will turn off that that default to trying to adapt to a famine. Now, when we talk about body composition, hey, healthy comes in all shapes and sizes. And everything that you can see here, these could all be very healthy people, and they're all different shapes. So these are called phenotypes. And so there's the ectomorph, the kind of skinny skeletal kind of tone to their look. The mesomorph is the more muscular. The endomorph is the rounder. But any one of these could actually have their ideal weight. So rather than thinking of ideal weight as what somebody else tells you, and you look on the scale and you're not your ideal weight, let's look at how to get 15 pounds healthier. Because when I say getting 15 pounds healthier, you could lose 7 pounds of fat, but in the process, as you're exercising and you're getting your vitamin D levels right and you're eating properly, you could actually gain 8 pounds of muscle. Well, then you look on the scale and you gained a pound, but you would be much healthier. So when we talk about getting 15 pounds healthier, that's what we mean. Somebody that is having trouble putting on muscle weight, they might want to gain weight. So, when we look at body composition, that's an important factor to look at. Like, what is the percentage of body fat to muscle mass? That's something that we can actually measure. The amount of lean tissue versus fatty tissue. And there are optimal ranges, and with women, it should be higher than men. So when we think of biomarkers and ways to measure things, sure, a scale that just measures your pounds, that's going to give you some information, but I think that's the worst tool to use as far as biomarkers go. An abdominal measurement, just measuring your girth, just measuring a tape measure around your abdomen actually is equated with that's a good useful measurement for health or lack thereof. And then body fat percentage or body composition again is useful. Now in the office we do have a body composition analysis scale, and it actually tells you not just your body fat percentage, but also the percentage of visceral fat. It tells you what your metabolic age is, how healthy your metabolism is. So if you're curious about this, I did put a Q code on there, because if you want to get a BCA analysis here in the office, we have the BCA scale here. You're welcome to just let my team know. It only takes a couple of minutes to run that test. And then we can send that to the colleagues we've joined up with Sprint Set, and they will actually talk you through what the details mean and talk through what your goals are, what your challenges are, and they may be able to give you also some guidance. So there's no charge for that, but you're welcome. We're happy to do that for you here in the office. When we look at and if you can even just send us a text, and that way my team will be alerted, BCA scan. And if you're not a member of our practice and you'd like to come in and get the scan done, we're also happy to offer that to you as well. So just send a text to my team, BCA scan, and we're happy to do that. Now, when we talk about abdominal girth, again, there's ways that when you measure what the circumference of your belly is, it actually is equated with health markers. And so when we talk about healthy abdominal girth, again, women, it's going to be a bigger number than with men. But essentially, we can take this number and we can look at, in centimeters or inches, where do you fall in your risk ratios for having other types of chronic diseases. So the numbers are right there. All right, here's the next big lie. Just eat less and you'll lose weight. Okay, this is an unsustainable strategy to take. That's like saying, I'm just going to hold my breath for as long as I can. Well, your body doesn't allow you to hold your breath until you die. Little kids, I'm going to hold my breath till I die. It's impossible. Your body will not let you do that. It's unsustainable. The same thing is true for trying to not eat, because your body's going to your metabolism is going to change. So if you just go into trying to starve yourself, you're going to go into survival mode, which means your brain is going to say, whoa, famine, we're going to have to be more economical here. We're going to have to just store everything we can to store it to fat because this famine might go on. We don't know how long it's going to go on for. And so it's short-term torture and it's that yo-yo thing that happens. So it's not sustainable, and your body is so smart that it actually will slow down your metabolism and make sure that you burn less just to try and help you to survive. And so that's going to actually, if you slow your metabolism, it's going to prevent the results that you want. And yet fasting can be useful. So there's a difference between starving and fasting. Now, this is an example. This is going to blow your mind. If you haven't heard about this study before, this one individual fellow, he was a 27-year-old Scotsman. He was obese. He weighed 456 pounds. He water fasted, meaning he didn't eat any food at all, only drank water. I think he might have put a little bit of salt in the water at times. He fasted for 382 days, more than a year, and he lost 276 pounds in that year. He hit his target weight of 180 pounds. He never gained it back. And while he was doing this, he was being monitored medically, and they were measuring, they were doing blood tests, they were measuring all of his nutrition markers. Everything normalized. All of his blood values normalized. The electrolytes even eventually normalized and just became stable without taking supplements. His depression lifted, his neurotransmitters, his hormones all became normalized. And he never gained the weight back. He got to the goal that he had. So if you're considering water fasting and you're thinking, I don't know if I can do a day, well, this guy did over a year. So everything's relative, isn't it? So fasting can be a tool that you can use. And there's definitely specific ways to do that. So I'd want you to make sure that you study ahead of time your strategy with that. Calories are calories. I just need to count them. No, there are definitely different types of calories. Because remember, a calorie is a chemical that's going to impact your physiology. It could be a healthy, beneficial chemical, or it could be a toxic chemical. But those foods that are coming in, even the things we're calling foods that aren't even foods, right? They're still going to come with some calories. And just because you're counting calories is not going to be the solution. Empty calories actually take up room that nutritionally dense foods would have been providing and can add toxins. So definitely something to look at. And so again, we're now coming to that perfect storm of toxic deficient foods, sedentary lives, and social stress, those three things. So let's look at a little bit more detail of this toxic deficient foods that we have to be concerned about. Building a pyramid. So obesity is the linchpin to chronic disease. And this pyramid that is considered the healthy diet pyramid has led to so much more obesity. Look at what's at the bottom there. All those grains are right at the bottom. And then you do have the fruits and vegetables next, and then you have the meat and dairy next, and then you have at the top the sweets and the fats. But really, we need to change this. And I'm excited because I know that our new Health and Human Services Secretary Kennedy is actually shifting that along with the FDA, the new people in charge. They are actually going to be making a change in the dietary recommendations, the official ones. And this, you might think, well, what's the point? It's just an exercise of futility. But actually, this actually informs what happens in institutions on the food that they're providing, whether that's hospitals or schools or federal buildings, like what's in the cafeteria, like what are they offering? Literally, it's based on the food pyramid. So this is going to make a big difference in our health because they're actually coming up with a true healthy food guidelines. So if you think about, again, just comparing what our genes were designed for, genetically speaking, our ancestors would have been that wild hunter and gatherer. And if you compare what they would have been eating to the industrialized modern human, you can see where the trouble is here. So high carbohydrates for the wild hunter gatherer, high carbohydrates, but they would have been healthy, they would have been complex carbohydrates, not the refined simple carbohydrates. There would have been low to moderate good fats rather than the modern world going for the low fat. When you take the fat out of healthy foods, you turn them into sugar bombs. You go for the low fat yogurt, you're now eating a lot of sugar. So we want to have the low to moderate good fats present. And those would also be healthy animal fats. High protein in that wild hunter-gatherer population versus, oh, I'm going to avoid that red meat. And then turns out people are way low in the protein that they need. No refined foods, no dairy, no sugar. Honey would have been the only sweetener they had, and then fruits occasionally. And so here we have so much sugary foods being offered to us. And when people say, well, everything in moderation, I mean, even back in the 1800s, there was very low levels of sugar that we would have been eating. I think of Laura Ingalls Wilder times, Little House on the Prairie times, like very little sugar overall, right? You look at modern world and you talk about moderation in the 1800s versus moderation today. Moderation today is way too much sugar. You just have to face the facts there. So you have to really rethink that. And the results are in, expending energy to be hunting and gathering, right? And those kinds of foods versus, oh yeah, what are we feeding our kids? There was this amazing little comic that I saw that shows, it shows two little kids sitting on the edge of the sidewalk, and they've got their Coke and their bag of potato chips in their hand, and there's a dog looking at them like begging. And the father is saying to them, don't give that to the dog. You'll make that dog sick. That Coke and those chips are your food, right? Yeah. So really the results are in. Now, if we took we're talking about humans here, but if you took any animal and took them, instead of feeding them what they normally are designed to be fed and to eat their normal diet, and you feed them a modern industrialized diet, you're just going to get obesity. You're just going to get that. Now, I promise you, this is a photoshopped picture of this obese giraffe that nobody tortured that giraffe and led to that. But it's just to make a point that anytime you go away from what we were genetically designed for into this industrialized modern world of what we call food, you're gonna get bad outcomes. So we have to use our smart brain to make the choices that are going to be the healthier choices. So the fails that occur with poor food quality is we're going to get toxic choices, and like glyphosate or the empty calories. We're going to get deficient choices, right? The foods that they look like a food, but actually has very little nutrients in it. And then the unbalanced choices. So the choices that are hormonally unbalanced, that have a high glycemic load to them. Even organic sugars and grains are still going to be spiking the glycemic load. And if you're not sure what that is, we're going to look at that in just a moment. So poor food quality means toxic deficient foods, and that means that we are creating a deficiency. We're filling ourselves with nutrient deficient calories and choices, and that can be trouble. Now let's look at what hormones are involved here. These are the 5 that I want to talk about today that have the most impact on weight loss resistance and just the dysregulation that can happen with the hormones that gets in the way of you achieving the results that you're looking for. Insulin. So insulin is the hormone that takes sugar out of the bloodstream. So if you eat something sugary, we have to increase the insulin in order to get that out of the bloodstream. Glucagon is a hormone that will put sugar into the bloodstream. And so if suddenly a tiger is chasing us and we want more sugar in the bloodstream to power up those muscles and fuel them, glucagon is what we'll use to take glycogen that's stored in the liver and change it into sugar that is dumped into the bloodstream. So those two work kind of a yin-yang relationship. Then we have leptin. Leptin is the hunger suppression hormone. And so it's the satiation hormone. It suppresses our appetite. It says, I've had enough now. I don't need to eat anymore. And ghrelin is the hunger hormone. Think of your stomach growling. That's how I remember ghrelin is the hunger hormone. And so that will, when that's high, we're hungry. And so again, the leptin and the ghrelin, they work kind of in a yin-yang relationship. And then we have cortisol. And so cortisol is the stress hormone. And when the stress hormone is high, our body goes into survive the next minute mode. And so we are starting to think about what do we need to do to just survive the next minute? Well, that's when we're going to have more of that glucagon dumping in and getting more and more sugar into the blood. And then if we have too much, then the insulin has to come in. And then we start to get the insulin resistance because everything starts to go sideways. So insulin is the fat storage hormone. That's all you need to remember with that. It is about blood sugar, but it's the fat storage hormone. The more you load up the sugar in the blood, the body says, well, if I don't need it right now, I'm going to store it in the fat for when I do need it. And so when you have elevated insulin, that is just locking you into fat storage mode. So remember, you're either going to be burning fat or you're going to be storing fat. That's a toggle switch. Your cells are either moving towards storing it or moving towards burning it. And insulin, when you have like too much insulin around, it's going to lock you into the fat storage mode instead of the fat burning mode. What causes elevated insulin? It's going to be your food choices, sugars and refined carbohydrates, the fast carbs, and dairy can also do that as well. So you want to choose your dairy well, very strategically if you are taking it. Energy imbalance is the other part of this, though. If you have excess calories and you're overeating or under moving or both, then that is going to increase insulin as well. So just being too sedentary and eating the same way you did when you were very active could actually create an imbalance because you're not using the calories up fast enough. And when you have excess calories, you're going to start to store those as energy, which puts you into fat storage mode again. Now, if you're not sure what the glycemic index is, basically they just put, if you ate glucose, which is just pure sugar, and you watched what happened over time in your blood sugar levels and you measured it in 15 to 30 minutes, that blood sugar spikes up and then peaks around 45 minutes and then it comes back down again. And so in a couple of hours, you're going to have it back down to the normal levels. That's what this glycemic index is. And so if you have foods that spike it like that, then we're going to call that blood sugar spiking. Now, something like lentils, when you eat that, it goes up a little bit and then it just gradually comes back down again. So it doesn't have the spike to it. And so that's just a way of referencing if a food has a high glycemic index, this is what it means. And so what are the high glycemic foods? Well, almost all the refined grains are going to have high glycemic indexes. And so you can just see a lot of the breakfast cereals are there, a lot of the snack foods that we have, like pretzels and things like that. All of the snacks for kids, graham crackers, right? Bagels, white rice, corn chips, white bread, even whole wheat bread still has a high glycemic index here. And these are the fast carbs. And so if we start to look at what are we eating in our country, look at what we're eating. The refined sugars, the grains, the vegetable oils, and the dairy, it's more than 70% of the calories that we take in our food supply. Whereas the traditional paleo-friendly foods like the meat and the fish, the eggs, nuts, seeds, fruits, and so on, look at that, it's 30%. And so when you think about it, the refined sugars, refined vegetable oils, grains and dairy, they're things that our Paleolithic ancestors never would have eaten at all. And there they are, the dominant part of our diet. And these foods, again, they're virtually unknown in ancestral human diets, and here they are. And again, the only refined sugars would have been honey, would have been the only refined sugar. And that's refined by a bee. It's natural, and it has so many good things in it. Honey does, natural raw honey. And so if we look at over time, 1960 and then 1976, you see obesity started to go up. What was happening in that era of 1976, 1980? It's interesting if we look at it over time here, because when we look at like even going back to the 1800s, sugar was part of our diet even back in the 1800s. That sugar has pretty much stayed steady as we go through. But when we start to add in the feedlot produced meats. So when we start to domesticate our meats and industrialize our meats rather, and then we added the refined grains and we added refined vegetables and we added hydrogenated oils, like all these things were being added in. But then in the 1970s, we added high fructose corn syrup. That's what we added. And that has caused the obesity to just skyrocket, a big inflection point that happened right there. So that is a big one that we need to really take care of and get rid of. Sugar bondage. It is an addiction. It is a substance that is being abused. Alcoholics know this. When they try to get rid of alcohol, a lot of them go directly to sugar as just a replacement addiction. So the environment you're in has a big impact. If you're around people that eat a lot of sugar, it's hard. So you have to actually clear out your environment. The battle is won at the register. Anything that gets into the house, just don't even have it in the house. And oftentimes we have relationships that are revolving around sugar, like, oh, if you're a good little girl, here's your sweet treat, right? I grew up with that. So we all did. We all grew up with thinking that sugar was a reward. And so we have to look at all those different belief systems that we have. And, we have relationships where we want to treat people and we give them sugar, which is not healthy for them. So we just have to look at all those different cultural things that we do. And it is a slippery slope. Once we start to have a little bit, it just gets worse and worse. So this is a dragon to slay, and it really, really is worth it. Now, what are the 7 dieting pitfalls? So drinking calories is a big one. People are all into smoothies these days, thinking that that's a healthy drink. Well, our ancestors, they would have drank water. That's what we're designed to drink is water. But drinking your calories is something to look at. And even if it's smoothies, really look at what is in that smoothie. And my brother, he was all excited because he got a NutriBullet. He's going to get healthy eating, and he's getting all this organic, fresh fruit. And don't you know that after a few months, he actually started to become diabetic, and he linked it directly to just bringing that NutriBullet into the house. So he had to get real about that and slay that dragon because that sugar was coming in through too much fruit. So we have to watch out for that as a dieting pitfall as well. And then dairy for some people can also be sabotaging their results. And then what I call grainitarians. So some people, they're like, I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to eat vegetarian. I'm going to become a vegetarian as though it's a healthier choice. But oftentimes what that means is they're lowering their protein intake and they're replacing the animal proteins with grains that look like those animal proteins, but they're actually made with grains. So becoming a grainitarian is not going to be a good long-term strategy. And then snacks. Let's talk about snacks. People oftentimes, they think of a snack and they interchange it with the idea of a treat. Now, a treat might not be as healthy for you, and it's every once in a while. But a snack is something you might have on a regular basis. Snacks, by definition, you need to think of them as only healthy foods. So a snack should have the same definition of a healthy food as you do for a main meal. And ultimately, you'll be better off if you can even remove the snacks and just get down to the 3 squares a day. And even for some people, even less than that. Now, also watch out for, oh, I just exercised. I can eat whatever I want. And actually, if you do the math, that latte at at your favorite coffee shop, that is going to be loaded with so many calories, especially when you add one of those muffins with it or those cupcakes with it, right? Well, I just exercised. Yeah, really be careful of that because you're gonna undermine your goals that you're trying to work towards. And then for many people, skipping breakfast can be a problem because by the time they do eat, they're hungry. And if they're still in carb burning mode, they go into, oh no, I just will eat anything at all. What's in front of me? Oh, there's a bagel. I'll have that. And so it's hard to keep control over what you're choosing if you're actually getting to the point where you're hungry. Now, for other people, they may be strategically intermittent fasting and they may skip breakfast because they're not even hungry. And that could be a good strategy. But just watch what happens for you for this idea of skipping breakfast. For some people, it actually can interfere with their strategy and the success of the goals that they have. Now, when we talk about bonfire correct, what that means is paleo correct. And so if you were thinking about what would a healthy snack be, it would be unlimited vegetables, abundant lean and natural meats, some fruit, nuts, and seeds, limited starch, no sugar. That's what a healthy snack would be. And that's what a healthy meal would be as well. So you want to be thinking about having the bonfire correct or paleo correct diet. And what do I mean by paleo correct? Well, thinking about what our genes dictate as far as what our nutritional needs actually are. Our genes were shaped over time by environmental experience. So the environment we were in helped to determine this is what we should be eating. Now we've changed our environment, but our genes haven't changed, not in over 40,000 years. That's 3,700 generations. And even as much as 500 generations ago, all humans just ate the same diet. And when we look at our ancestral, when we look at evidence ancestrally, there's no evidence of degenerative disease. It's only in more recent history that we start to see degenerative disease showing up. And the agricultural revolution was a big part of when that all changed. What does paleo look like? Again, it's the unlimited non-starchy vegetables. Those are the good carbs, no refined grains, because those are the bad carbs. It also is going to be plenty of fruits and berries. But the other fruits, berries for the most part, but the other fruits have been modernized to have way more sugar in them than our paleo ancestors would have had access to. Relatively high in animal protein, moderate amounts of good fats, high in fiber, high in potassium, low in sodium, and overall a net alkaline load. So our modern foods are very acidic in nature when we load up on them, and then that can affect our health as well. And of course, the paleo foods would have been rich in phytochemicals, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, because the soil that it would have been grown in was going to be so rich with all those nutrients. And nowadays, the soil is depleted. So that's what paleo would look like. A zone diet, maybe some of you have heard of that. That's similar to paleo. And the way they do it is just looking at the rule of thirds. So 40% of the diet, the healthy carbs, 30% healthy proteins, 30% healthy fat. And sometimes it's just simple. Just look at what is on the plate and just ask the question, where are the plants? Where are the healthy fats? Where are the healthy proteins? Just start asking that question of anything that you're eating, whether it's a plate of food or a snack. Ask yourself, where's the plant, but where's the healthy fat and where's the healthy protein every time you eat? And what is that going to look like? Well, it might look like this, an omelet with veggies and sausage, or this, eggs, avocado, bacon, and tomato, or this, bison steak with avocado and greens. How about almond flour pancakes and blackberries? So yes, you can have your pancakes and eat them too, as long as you're using the almond flour. Or there's other types of gluten-free flours, cassava flour. There's lots of good ones out there you can still use. Grilled ahi peppers, avocado, and greens. How about chicken thighs, apple, almonds, and greens? Swedish meatballs. Now, these would not have had flour added to them. If anything, maybe some almond flour, but you can also just make them without the flour at all, without any grain. Wild-caught salmon and greens. And how about this one? Shrimp and lobster tail with avocado. So there's lots of good ideas out there. And if you're looking for ideas, at the end, I'm going to give you some links to some websites that have some great foods you can choose from and get inspired by. So again, the do's and the don'ts. Do the non-starchy vegetables, some fruit, meat, poultry, fish, range-fed eggs, natural fats, some nuts and seeds, and drink water. And the don'ts, avoid those refined carbohydrates, the cereals, the grains, the sweeteners, the bad vegetable oils. And the exceptions are olive oil, avocado oil, coconut palm oil. Those are the healthy vegetable oils. And then the healthy animal oils and fats would be things like beef tallow. And even lard actually can be a healthy fat, again, if it comes from a healthy pig. And then the dairy products would be don'ts. But again, if you are eating a fermented dairy product, then you actually may get away with it because our ancestors did fairly well with the fermented foods and fermented dairy. And then just avoiding the soda, the juice, and the alcohol. So if we can just make it very simple, the three exchanges most people have to look at are changing from the glutinous grains to the ancient grains. If you're not ready to give them up altogether, that would be the next step, changing from glutinous to ancient grains, because the ancient grains are anti-inflammatory. Sugars, from the processed and artificial to the natural, or stevia can be good for some people. Even some of the sugar alcohols can be useful for people. And so you can use those instead of the cane sugar and the high fructose corn syrup, that kind of thing. and then exchanging the fats from the toxic seed oils to the healthy fats. And so again, looking back at our perfect storm, we've now covered the toxic deficient foods. Let's now look at this next part of this, which is sedentary lifestyle. Okay, a wild human in captivity starts to look like the food pyramid here. So this is a problem. Sitting too much is a problem. We need to be active. Humans that are living today inherited a genome that was programmed for daily physical activity and a high fiber diet. So we were programmed to go and work to get our food and not to just have it thrown at us through a window in our car, right? See, in fact, nowadays you don't even have to leave your house. You pick up the phone and DoorDash is going to deliver that food to you. So we were meant to expend energy in order to obtain energy. We talked about vitamin D for weight loss resistance, and we talked about the fact that vitamin D can modulate the composition of gut microbes, but there's more to it with vitamin D as well. Now, if you're thinking of the key to weight loss, this quote I love, it's all about the key to weight loss is muscle gain. And that's going to lead to fat loss over time. So in other words, the goal should be body repartitioning, exchanging fat for muscle. We talked about exchanging the foods, but now think about exchanging fat for muscle. So not simply just blind weight loss, where you could be decimating muscle mass and having that sarcopenia. We want to actually exchange the fat for muscle. Well, it turns out that when you see bodybuilders that are really bulked up and somebody makes a comment of, oh, steroids, they're just using steroid injections, they're artificial hormones, are the only way that they've got that physique. Well, it turns out that anabolic steroids that bodybuilders use, they do shift fat to muscle, but they come with some side effects that can be very harmful. It turns out that vitamin D actually acts like a steroid for directing your metabolism toward muscle and bone building and towards fat burning. So that is great news. And so sunshine is what does that, right? And so we get stronger from being out in the weather, right? We get stronger from just enduring temperature changes and so on. But we also get stronger because the vitamin D coming from the sun is actually redirecting our metabolism. So if you're not being able to be out in the sun, then vitamin D supplementation would be a way to go that helps with that as well. And now some people say, but wait, I thought I needed to avoid the sun. It turns out that these are key sun protection tips that I want you to consider, because this is something a lot of people don't know as well. It turns out that our skin will be much more susceptible to damage from sun if we have cell membranes that are filled with these seed oils. And so you do have to watch out for the sun and getting too much sun, getting too much UV rays. If you have been eating a lot of the seed oils, they compromise safe sun exposure. And you have to, sometimes it can take up to 2 years to fully clear the seed oils from your cell membranes. So at least you have to wait 6 months of being away from the seed oils before you're going to be more easily protected in the sun. And then other sun protection tips, I use Cataplex F and calcium lactate whenever I'm going to be out in the sun, because it provides the essential fatty acids that my body needs, as well as the very highly absorbable calcium that the skin needs in order to have greater UV resistance and reduce oxidative damage. So that's another tool that you can use. It turns out that molecular hydrogen also is going to combat oxidative stress and reduces inflammation, which is caused by UV exposure. So I use my EcoGo. We carry them here in the office as well, and they actually will take regular water and it actually hydrogenates that water. So drinking hydrogenated water is another tool for sun protection. Just a little side tip there for you. They do have hydrogen tablets that you can use as well as another way to achieve that. Now back to our focus here. Well, what is it that is causing elevated insulin? Again, we talked about the food choices, but also it's the energy imbalance. Too many calories, overeating, and under moving. And so let's look more closely at that diet lie. Oh, I'll just work it off at the gym. Is that right? Well, again, look at the energy balance. So caloric needs is definitely part of this. The intake and the output is part of it, but there's a hormonal impact as well. So if you want to support hard training and lean muscle, but not fat, then you want to do it strategically. And so food is going to act like a chemical in the body, and there is going to be a hormonal impact to that. So when we look at the balance, the energy balance, that's another part of this. So our genes are very thrifty. Our genes were designed to be very economical as far as energy expenditure goes. Now, if you think about it, hunter-gatherers, they would have been expending so much energy all day long that anytime that they could get more efficient at it and still get the food that they need, that was going to be a winner. So our body is actually looking to be as lazy as possible, as little expenditure as possible to get the calories in, because it costs us so much energy to usually go and get them. And so we're actually genetically designed to be lazy. If we can just pick up the phone and call for the food, oh my gosh, that would have been amazing for our ancestors with the energy they had to expend. But yet, genetically speaking, we're still designed as our ancestors. So our genes are very thrifty, and it's very easy for us to consume those calories, but it's very difficult to burn them off because our body's always trying to preserve them for the next time we have to go out and expend them to get food. And so you're never going to outtrain a lousy diet, as they say. And again, we're just, think about it. If we were spending all of our energy just to go and get our food, and then we added another hour of just exercise in there, that would be suicide. So genetically speaking, our body says, no, don't add exercise in. We're trying to conserve that. So we have to actually go against that. Again, use the smart part of our brain to add exercise in as a supplement, the same way that we would add a nutritional supplement in because of the depletion of nutrients in our soils, for example. So it is said that 30% of in the gym, 70% in the diet. Abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym. But abs definitely we need exercise in order to get that fitness that we want to achieve. And so exercise is also critical in achieving optimal health. If we want to correct metabolic derangement, in other words, if we want to get our metabolism so it's moving towards fat burning instead of carb burning, then we have to understand our ancestors would have exerted themselves daily. And it's still important to exercise as though our survival depended on it. So I want you to think about it that way. Our body expects and requires movement, and you have to exert your body to recondition your metabolism. If you want to reset your metabolic state, you have to be doing burst exertion exercising. That means moving, sweating, and panting. So, that guy that was drinking all the Diet Fanta, he would walk this course. It was like 5 miles long, 10 miles he would walk, but he was so used to walking it that he never broke a sweat, never was panting as he went and did the walk. So I said to him, all I want you to do is I want you to walk as fast as you can in bursts as you go do that same walk. And literally, he just got to the point where he kept doing burst exertion on the same walk. And again, it was one of those linchpins that shifted his metabolism. So rebalancing your hormones with exercise, here are the rules. Only exercise on the days that you eat, because that's what our ancestors would have done. Exertion is key, moving, sweating, and panting. If you can go for 30 minutes or plus, that's awesome. That's a good thing to shoot for. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, you just want to do what moves you. As long as you're doing something you're going to be moving, sweating, and panting. Now, there's a body hack I want to share with you because some of you have concerns about, well, when I go and try exercise, I hurt myself. My joints can't take it. My knees can't take it. My shoulder can't take it. And so you feel like you're undermined by the idea of exercising. Well, there is a hack for this that works really well, and it's called the B3 BFR bands, blood flow restriction bands. What they do is they trick your body into thinking that you're doing vigorous exercise, but you only have to do light exercise to do it. And so what it does is you put these bands around your extremities, around your arms, around your legs, and then you just do light exercise. And when you're doing vigorous exercise, you use up all the oxygen quite quickly. And then the signaling to the brain says, whoa, low oxygen, we better now release the hormones that are all the benefits that we get from vigorous exercise, like nitric oxide, like human growth hormone, like brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So what are these? Nitric oxide is essential for healthy blood vessel walls and for stimulating our mitochondria to expend, to create more energy. And so nitric oxide is good for all kinds of things, and it's waiting to be secreted. We make it in our body, but we're waiting to secrete it when it's triggered by vigorous exercise. So if we're not doing the vigorous exercise, we're not secreting something that's already there to help us and benefit us. So using the B3 bands, we do get that secretion of the nitric oxide, because the blood flow restriction actually, it restricts the venous flow, not the arterial flow, the venous flow, and it slows down the oxygen getting to the brain. So the brain thinks, oh, we must be doing vigorous exercise. And so then it releases the nitric oxide. Now, human growth hormone, it's one of the most important anti-aging hormones that we have. Again, that gets flooded when we're doing the vigorous exercise or when we're using the BFR bands. And brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that's for learning things, that's for cognitive function. So that also has shown to be one of the hormones that's released when we are using the blood flow restriction bands. And the B3 bands are the ones that I like the most. I've done some research on this, and I've talked to colleagues that use them. And so that, like, some of the benefits include losing weight. And again, it's because it's stimulating the natural human growth hormone. And when we stimulate that, the elevated growth hormone increases your metabolism rate so that you're burning more calories even at rest. And so that's how it helps you to get in shape faster. And it also helps to shift you into fat burning mode instead of the carb burning mode that many people are stuck in. And it also helps to build more muscle. So you can see it, and it also reduces inflammation. So all of those things, like when I exercise, it's uncomfortable, I get achy. The B3 bands actually help you to exercise, and then you start to feel great instead of having the nagging areas that are painful. And so what does it look like? So for example, without the B3 bands, to achieve the same thing that you would with them, you'd have to do an hour of heavy weights versus 20 minutes of light weights, or 2 miles of walking versus a half a mile of walking, 45 minutes of cardio versus 10 minutes of cardio, an hour of aerobics or yoga versus 20 minutes of aerobics or yoga. You see how this works? So you do less with less intensity, but you get the value as though you've done that vigorous workout. So I can't say enough about them. If you're curious about them, there's a QR code there that'll take you right to a website that has all kinds of informational, the research behind them, the safety behind them, and also every topic you can imagine. If you're into pickleball, or if you're into yoga or Pilates or weightlifting or CrossFit, whatever it is, they've got the research there for you, and they show you how to use it in using those methods as well. All right, back to that perfect hormonal storm. We've covered toxic deficient foods. We've covered sedentary lives. Let's look at social stress. And by the way, there are things that have to do with that: chronic psychological stress, but also sleep deprivation. They both are the things that are going to spike the cortisol levels. So yeah, I don't know about any of you, but sleep, it's my Achilles heel. It's the thing. I get into a project, next thing you know, oh, it's late, I got to get up early. Next thing you know, I'm not quite getting as much sleep. Yeah, that is what my Achilles heel is. So I'm speaking from scar tissue here that yes, I too have those things that I need to work on. But the social stress, the cortisol levels, can be the result of either or both of these happening. And sometimes the sleep deprivation is that we're thinking about the things that we're stressed about, and that's interfering with our sleep. So sleep actually is an important piece. Remember that anytime we have that chronic psychological stress or chronic sleep deprivation, it increases cortisol, and our body thinks that it's a famine. Whenever we have sustained high cortisol levels, our body thinks we're in famine mode, and so we just start to go into fat storage mode. Now, sleep's got nothing to do with it. Yes, it does. That's a lie. And it does because our circadian rhythm is going to be affected by light and by our sleep schedule. So cortisol cycles, and it goes high and low depending on the time of the day. So it's low in the evening because we're getting ready to go to sleep, and it should be high in the morning because we're getting ready to go out and hunt and gather, and we need energy to do that. So if you think of the different hormones in the body, our thyroid is what regulates our idling speed, but when it's time for action, it's our cortisol levels that are needed. So we do require cortisol. It's not a bad hormone. It's just that when it's out of balance, it's a problem. And so if we have unnatural schedules, like just staying up too late, sleeping in the morning, that kind of thing, it messes with our circadian rhythm and it messes with our cortisol levels. If we have unnatural lighting, that's another part of this. So it is interesting that when a bear in the summer has that light that's so long in the day, that triggers the hormones in that bear's body to say, oh, we better store fat right now because it's summertime. And when it's winter, we're going to have to be burning fat. So we're going to store that fat right now. So if we have days that we have unnatural lighting for long periods of time, the body thinks, oh, it must be summer. So we better store fat right now. And so unnatural lighting, like from screens and monitors and LED lights, it causes our leptin levels to go down, which means our appetite goes up. It causes our ghrelin levels to go up, which means our appetite is up. Same thing. Our cortisol levels stay higher, which means carb craving, and our insulin goes up, which means we're storing fat. What does that look like to you? So those are all the things that happen with sleep deprivation. So the best practices for sleep are use our circadian rhythm as a guide. And that means the light and dark cycles. And this time of the year, yes, it is light later. And I'm going to challenge you to see what it's like to just not even turn the lights on. Just use daylight. And when the daylight goes down, if anything, light some candles, because that's what our ancestors would have done. And that red light that's lower down actually is fantastic for stimulating melatonin and sleep and decreasing cortisol levels. So if you have to use lighting, use the lamps that are low on the table. Like those are just the ways to do that. Sometimes people will put red lights into their light bulbs and turn those on in the evening. If you have to be in front of screens, you can use the blue blocker glasses or goggles. Like even just those yellow safety goggles will block that blue light. It's a strategy you can use. When you're sleeping, you want to shoot for 8 to 9 hours of sleep. And if you're older, maybe you can get away with 7.5. The studies show that that can still be effective for older folks. But for most people, you want to be shooting for 8 to 9 hours. That's what our ancestors actually would have they would have had 9 hours of sleep. As soon as the incandescent light bulb was introduced into our culture, the sleep rhythms changed to 8 hours. And then since we've introduced screens, it's very common that it's more like 6 hours for a lot of people. So you want to make sure you have a dark and quiet and comfortable environment that you're sleeping in. And when I say dark, I mean dark, like no little digital lights on from your phone or your charger or whatever other things, the radio showing the sleep, the night light, like none of those things, just real dark, quiet, comfortable. E-fast, that means no screens, at least 90 minutes before you go to sleep, very minimum 30 minutes before you go to sleep. And then the household culture. You know, it's hard to have night owls and morning glories in the same household. So try to have everybody going to sleep around the same time. That's going to be much easier than if people are on different schedules. So given the ineffectiveness of popular weight loss diets, the adoption of a healthy lifestyle is more appropriate for winning the war against chronic disease. And I hope you can see this, that this is actually what our intent is that we want to be having people get healthier, not just lose weight. So if we look at the weight loss resistance and inflammation, addressing the stress, one other piece that's important here is recognizing that chiropractic adjustments can help to turn the stress switch off. And so when we're working with people, we actually can measure what their stress levels are by using the scanning technology that we have. So when we are correcting spinal subluxations, misalignments in the spine that can interfere with organ function, it could be interfering with, let me just show you this chart here. We want to adjust the spine, do spinal exercises, and break bad habits, which is what we've been talking about tonight, how you eat, how you move, and how you think. So why chiropractic for weight loss resistance? Remember, the brain controls everything. So it controls every organ, every hormone, it controls all the blood vessels, it controls everything. And so if we have interference in the nervous system, it can start to disturb function. The organs that would be related to weight loss resistance would be the thyroid not working well and slowing down our metabolism, the adrenals being overloaded and under functioning, the liver not being able to deal with toxins and digesting our food, the endocrine system, which is all of the hormones in the body, and the digestive organs. Those are all controlled by the nervous system. So nerve interference can actually drive up cortisol levels, and we know that high cortisol levels drive fat storage. So when we are measuring people and whether there's nerve interference, our thermal scans actually show where it's affecting specific organs and tissues and circulation in the body. And then when we correct the subluxations, we see these scans actually improve, meaning you're getting better nerve supply to those organs. And if you're interested in getting a scan for yourself, just send us a text us 15 and 15 consult, and that can be something that we can talk about of getting you in so we can do those scans on you too. I've talked about Bonfire Correct. And so we love this model of when you think about having a bonfire, you need three things, and you need all three things. You could have a pile of wood, the fuel, and you could have air, but if you don't have a spark, you don't have a fire. Or you could have plenty of air and spark, but if there's no fuel, no wood to burn, then there's no fire there either. Or you could have the fuel and the air, you could have the fuel and the spark, but if you suffocate that fire, right, there's no fire that happens. So if your bonfire is your health, you need to have fuel, air, and spark. So you have to be looking at how you eat, which is your fuel, how you move, which is air, and how you think, which is spark. And so that's what we mean by Bonfire Correct, is looking at it as your diet is a part of your diet style, which is part of your lifestyle, how you eat, how you move, and how you think. Now, some people also know that detoxing can be very useful when it comes to weight loss resistance. And the reason why that is because we need to get the liver healthier in order to get rid of toxins. And if you don't have a way of getting rid of toxins, the body has to store them somewhere. And the safest place to store toxins is in fat. And so if you have a lot of toxins in your body and your body is going to get rid of those toxins, but it can't get them out, it will keep them in the fat. They're safer in the fat. Once they come out of the fat, they have to go through the bloodstream. And before they get out of the body, they're in the bloodstream where they can be dangerous. So you want to have a good detox, organs working, good bowel function, good liver function, because that is the way that we can healthfully and safely get rid of those toxins that are being stored in fat. There are two detox programs that we use here in the office. One is called the Purification Program, and one is called just the Simple Detox Program. And so if you want to know more about those, of course, just ask our team. However, we are excited that we're going to be coming right into the office here, an in-person appearance by our standard process rep, and she is going to be doing a presentation on the standard process detox programs. So you're welcome to check in with the office. That will be happening in early June. And so we hope that we can get lots of people there because this woman, Laura, she's amazing. I love what she presents. And so she's excited to share with you the details for the detox program from Standard Process. Now, some people, again, ask about intermittent fasting. So the idea behind intermittent fasting is to compress the time of eating down to 6 to 8 hours. Only eat breakfast. Well, eat breakfast only once you are hungry. So your breakfast, you're breaking your fast. It might happen at lunchtime, or it might happen in the afternoon. So for that breaking of the fast means that we have more time between finishing eating in the evening and before we start to eat the next day. And making sure that when you do break your fast, that it is a fat that you're using rather than a carb. So the typical breakfast foods tend to be very heavy on carbs. My favorite traditional breakfast is going to be bacon and eggs, and because there's lots of healthy fats in that. So make sure that whatever you are breaking your fast with, don't have it be a sugary carb-loaded thing. Go for something that is going to be more fat dense and protein dense. And that can help you to start to switch into being fat burning rather than carb burning. And that's going to help to shift your metabolism. So those are some key factors there. And now some of the resources that I promised. Again, you might want to take a screenshot of this, or you get out your camera and take a picture. the paleodiet.com, bonfirehealth.com, crossfit.com, performancemenu.com, marksdailyapple.com, paleocookbooks.com, paleodiet.com. And then if you're interested more about Sprint Set, you can go to sprintset.com/Dr. Rice. And then if you're curious about the B3 bands, you can go to wellspringcls.b3sciences.com. So those are some resources for you. All right, so again, just want to encourage you, if you want to talk down what your situation is, what your challenges are, what your goals are, we'd be happy to set up a consult with you. It can even just be a 10-minute phone call, and just text my team and let me know so that we can reach out and help you too. Otherwise, I hope you've got a lot of valuable information from this and that you're taking some notes and you're ready to do your action steps, because action is the key here. And again, if any questions come up, just reach out to us. All right, folks, so that's the presentation. I'm going to stop the recording now, and I'm going to just open it up so we can have questions. So thanks for everybody that's watching the recording, and reach out to us if you do have any questions.